All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. Hope you all are doing well. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what's happening for Bitcoin. Um, on the weekly, still not looking the best, right? We still have a very bearish weekly candle. So if I were to zoom out here, you can see this is a bigger, obviously bearish candle so far at least. The previous one. Just kind of, alluding to the fact that we could possibly have, three bearish candles in a row, just the same way as you look for three right soldiers as a reversal pattern, you can do the same thing for, um, your bearish case, right? I mean, you can see that happened here. You had three downward candles here, and it, expanded. So just kind of keep that in mind. Like, it's still not looking great. I it's very hard to paint a bullish picture at this point. I know that on the daily there is some bullish divergence on there, but it just, that's basically the Bulls' only like hope at this point. It does look very extremely bearish. It doesn't look like there's going to be a very strong recovery for right now. Um, I'm just not seeing a lot of bullish, tendencies in the market for right now. Um, going to the daily, you kind of have these compression candles, which is a good thing. So we didn't really get any sort of expensive moves on Saturday. So that was a good thing. We stayed within a smaller range. That was nice to see. Sunday we're still in this range as well. The only thing that worries me, at least for right now, is this is technically a swing high, right? You have a higher low, a higher high, a higher low, right? So if it closes like this, if today closes like this, obviously we're going to be below the weekly 200 MA on the futures chart, not the CME, not the contracts chart, but the actual exchange futures chart. And then on top of that, on the daily, we're going to get a swing high here. Um, so it's just not a real great scenario that we're seeing with Bitcoin right now. Going into the 12 hour, nothing, I've been expecting this drop to like 59K. That would be kind of like your last support zone, and it's just not giving it yet. So I'm either expecting a random drop down to it, today possibly. Hopefully it would be after 5 p.m. today Pacific Standard Time, so that we could get a wick at least for the next weekly candle. Um, but again, we could also do like what we did this past week, and pump first, right? So like on Monday, where was it? Let's see, that was back here. So on Monday, we pumped first all the way up here at 65.5, and then we just came down and we just couldn't hold anything. So, we could have that same sort of situation this week where we pump on Monday, Tuesday, make our high for the week, and then we fall, right? Um, One thing that I will say is that it's unlikely that we take out our Thursday bottom, before Sunday closes. So this is in theory, bottom of the week. Very unlikely that that will be taken out. So my guess for right now, and again, this is a guess, is that, coming into I'll go into like the 4 hour. Nah, we'll do the 1 hour so I can kind of show you guys. Hopefully we do the same thing like we did on Saturday. We just kind of chopped around. So I'm expecting some choppy price action. And if we're, you know, bullish, we want to see a drop down to 59K and a reaction there and then to come back up. If we are bearish, there's a good chance that we're going to chop around, either roll over or we make some sort of, basically a bullish pump to 61, 124 or 62, and then we just fall. So that's kind of what I'm expecting for the beginning of the week. It'll really tell me whether or not, the market eventually has to show its hand. So it'll, tell me whether or not we're going to be looking at more of a bearish profile or more of a bullish profile. Um, yeah, there's no, another hard thing too is that if you were to pick a direction right now, whether you're long or short, there's just no real pattern. Like this is just looks like a rollover, but it could always reverse as well. So there's just not a really a clean pattern with this. This just looks messy, right? It just doesn't look. I mean, you could technically, I guess, say that this is some sort of inverted Adam and Eve on a bullish case, but it just doesn't. It doesn't look clean. Like it just looks extremely, messy, like a mess here. I do know that there's some people that are long, some people that are short. It's best honestly, no matter what side you choose. Yes, you may get that big move, but just know that at this point in time, it's technically kind of like a gamble. There's no real market structure to guarantee or to really give you a high probability in one side or the other than, going short is going to be your bigger probability scenario because obviously that's kind of been our trend. But it could always rip right back up. It could look as head, right shoulder as possible and then rip in the opposite direction because it's going to really depend on whether or not we're now considered in a discount of the range. And I know that, from the previous consolidation period, that we've had in 2024, technically we are now in that discount. So if I were to pull up my chart, I think it was on Kraken if I remember correctly here. Um, you know, you you definitely are now in a discount of the range. So if I were to pull my fib tool from low to high, um, let's see, you're definitely in a discount of that range. So if this is our range for right now, if we're gonna stay within that 2024 range, you are technically at a discount. So that being said, anything that's a bear flag, you know, could definitely very well flip out bullishly or flip back bullishly, right? Because we're in a discount of the range. Um, Now, the real question that we have is whether or not this is our range that we're in. Is it a part of a bigger range where we're in the premium? We just don't, at this point, we just don't know, right? Um, as of right now, I'm open to both sides, both possibilities of a move happening. I think that there's a big move that's going to happen either, today or tomorrow, but I'm I'm not opinionated as to one side or the other. Obviously, the obvious, decision is that we're gonna, roll over. But right now, I'm more of a, maybe a 60-40, like 60% chance we're gonna roll over, right? Shorting, but then there's that 40% chance that we're gonna move up. Um, so I see a lot of indecision here. There's just not a lot of an obvious move, like I said. Obviously, if you're playing, the 200 system, this is a death cross on the 15. You can't stay above the 200 moving average. It just doesn't look bullish at all, right? But at any given time, we could get a massive spike up, and this all gets invalidated. I mean, these moving averages are still really close to price action, so this could just spike up completely, get a golden cross again on some of these smaller time frames, and then reverse, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. It's just very very difficult to identify what's going to happen with this market right now. Let's go ahead and move into our liquidity heat map here on Trading Different, and then we'll also look at our order book that we have. So taking a look at the liquidity heat map, let's see here. So this is the 4 hour, and you can see like, when I just have 25x checked off, if I were to group this even more here, maybe to 5 million aggregation, um, you know, probability wise, you're going to move down, like we've been saying, 57.3, 57, even to the 56 area before you move up. Um, the only the only thing I have to that is that there is a chance, before we move down to just invoke the last bit of longs, there's a chance that we come up, we hit about 62, 170, or even, less than that, 61, 160, somewhere around here, um, to invoke those last longs before we just rip the other direction. Um, that's a possibility. And I think there are some people that are going long that are, kind of estimating that this may happen. But just kind of keep that in mind if you are going short, right? There's a chance that we get one more last rip up before we get a rip down. Um, Going into the 1 hour, let's take a look here. And then mind you, like my indicator down here, this trend indicator, it's telling me that the daily is bearish, but the 4 hour is slightly bullish. So slightly bearish on the daily, slightly bullish on the 4 hour. That tells you what type of indecision we have for right now. So the 1 hour even makes it more confusing, right? Because the 1 hour is saying, oh yeah, we're gonna come up and rip through 61 124 first prior to going back down because this is where the yellow liquidity is at. So that's also a possibility, right? I mean, you could even get up into here, test the 62 area that we've been testing, and I know JP, Sin City Crypto's been talking 62.3, and that takes out this green area up here. I'm targeting 62 140. I'm kind of front running that, but that's a possibility. We come back up here and test it one last time and then fall, right? We free fall down to 57. So, if you are going short, just keep that in mind that we could have one last rip up, to just wreck the shorts, induce more longs, and then rip back in the shorts directions, right? So honestly, guys, like for this weekend, it's really best to stay out until the market gives us more information. If you do take a trade, like I said right now, it's more so a kind of a gamble. It's not really like this is a for sure direction. Just know that there's a good chance that you're going to lose that. Um, it's very, very indecisive right now. Looking at your 15 minute, it gives you the same thing, right? It gives you the probability that, yes, we are for sure probably going to move down, but do we rip back in the other direction first? And I'm honestly like I said, that's why I'm more 60-40 because there's a 40, a good 40% chance, in my opinion, that we do rip up first. It could even be higher. Like you could even say it's a 50-50 because we have that red liquidity right above us. We could rip to 62 and then come back down. Um, and yeah, the obvious play is that we're just going to roll over and visit 57,000, but you just have to keep your, an open mind here and just not just be one-sided, right? Um, so, that's kind of what I'm seeing is that probability wise, yeah, there is a good chance that, we roll over, but on the same token, you also have a decent chance that you're going to rip back up first, right? Or you could rip down 59,000 and then rip right back up to 62 and then fall. You could do something like this where make that 786 locally, come all the way up, and then boom, right? Which we've seen that before as well. So just be aware. I mean, the market's going to try to take everybody out that they can. So if you are going to hold a position, you got to hold it for long term. You got to have a deep stop loss. That's just kind of the environment that we're in. It's a lot harder right now to get that 3-to-1 risk reward. I know that's ideal, but if you're gonna trade in this market, just be aware that you're better off probably doing a 2-to-1. Especially because, like I said, this there's so much volatility, and there's not a lot of volume where they're just gonna rip this thing back and forth in both directions to wipe whatever whoever they can out and get emotions triggered, right? So 5 minutes showing the same thing. We still have our indicators the same way where the 4 hour is slightly bullish, the daily is slightly bearish. You don't have the 1 hour either way. 1 hour, though the hourly is at a zero. Um, but it's just I could see this going and ripping in both directions. This could be very violent today, or it could chop around like it did on Saturday. It's kind of up in the air at this point. Looking at our order book kind of shows the same thing. I mean, we're starting to get all these new orders to the upside to 61 5, 7, 61 5. The orders at 62 started getting pulled, so it kind of alludes to the fact that we're going to hit 61, 5-ish area maybe at the most, 61 2-ish area. But again, those orders could populate at any time. And then down below, you still have all of these orders like we've been seeing, right? Even to 59,000. So, we could take out some of these first and then we could come back up. We just don't know at this point. Um, so let's finally take a look at the simple map. Um, and I wish I was more decisive, guys, but honestly, like I can literally frame both directions at this point. It's very difficult to see just one side. And honestly, that's how we should be as traders, though, right? We should be able to frame both sides. We just have to pick which side we're going to go with. And like I said, at this point, at least for today, it's kind of a gamble. It's up in the air as to which side we're going to choose, right? So obviously, taking a look at our scalping timeframes, our 5 minute, our 15 minute, our hourly, you can see that we have a lot of 100x to the downside right near us. I wouldn't even say a lot, honestly. I mean, this is less than a million worth of longs to the downside. You have some to the upside, and there's not a lot. Um, you know, let's see. If I zoom out a little bit here, I mean, it does show that there's a possible bridge to the upside. There's more 100x, leading up for right now. I mean, you could take out this 100x down to 59,720 or 700, and then, start taking out some of this to the upside. There's more 100x locally, very close to us. But there is more 50x to the downside than there is, locally to us. Um, but there's a possibility we go down to 59.7, which we kind of look like we're going to be taking that sooner rather than later, and then ripping it back up to maybe that 61 124 area, and then maybe finally dropping from there. So kind of what I'm seeing on the short term. Again, very hard to tell because we don't have that much volume right now to trade with. And then when it comes to our swing time frames, which is going to be your daily, your 4 hour, you can see how little volume we actually have, right? I mean, we're talking less than even a half a million. So they could literally rip, you could just get somebody like CryptoFace to just kind of rip this back and forth in this market, even, like there's just not a lot of, it's easily manipulated. That's what I'm trying to get at. This is easy, in a market that's easily manipulated, even by smaller whales, right? Or even decent sized whales, because there's just nobody in the market right now, is what this is telling me. So, obviously, right above us at 61.2, it's um, a lot more orders or a lot more liquidation happens than right below us at 0.6358.6. So, on the swing time frame, it's telling us we could maybe visit this bar right here at 61.2. I don't know if we'll get to 61, probably 61.2 and 61.5, and then we'll have to see whether or not we get up to here to 61.8 and 62.1. But on the bigger time frames, it's targeting this area sooner rather than later, opposite the smaller time frames, mainly because of the cumulative longs is not as big as the cumulative shorts to the upside. So this would be an easier target for those whales to take this out first. But again, you never know. So a lot of conflict, a lot of indecision in these charts. Just be cautious, guys. Hopefully, once we get through, part of next week, we'll start seeing, even after the federal holiday, honestly, on July 4th, we hopefully will see a little bit more volume in the marketplace, that following week. So the first week of July, the last week of, part of the last few days of June that we have left, could be another rough week where we have low volume. We'll see. It's going to be very difficult to tell. So anyways, guys, that's what I have for you today. As usual, if you want to use my code, it's Sean, so tradingdifferent.com/code/Sean to get your 10% off of Trading Different. To use these tools, extremely helpful with trading. You get to really see kind of where liquidations are, where the volume is. So keep that in mind. That's all I have for you for today. Hope you guys take care, and I will talk to you tomorrow. See you later.